Welcome to Strong and Steady, where we talk about building strength, supporting your health, and choosing sustainable wellness for women in every season of life.
And I'm Brittany. I'm here with my co-host, Jessica. She's a mom of 4 littles with such a grounded, realistic approach to balance for low-tox living. She helps busy moms build healthy habits that actually work in real life without perfection or overwhelm.
And I'm Jessica, here with Brittany, a woman's health and fitness coach who specializes in elite aging. She helps women build strong bones and muscles so they can live their whole lives to the fullest with confidence, strength, and independence.
And together, we have over 2 decades specializing in the health and fitness industry. So whether you're in the thick of young motherhood
or focused on staying strong for the long run,
we are so glad you're here.
Welcome back. I am so excited. Today, our friend Candice Schroeder is joining us, and I've been following her story and her work for a little while, and I just find it so interesting. She gets to work with neurodivergent kids and adults. And so, Candice, can you just tell us kind of a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me in. This is
Absolutely.
awesome to get to talk to people that are just concerned about their health holistically and how to get to the root of different issues they have and how to promote longevity. And so what we are is we're a program designed to support children's cognitive and emotional development. The types of parents that enroll their kids in our program are parents that are looking for a non-medicine approach to helping kids who are struggling with neurodivergence, so troubling symptoms of neurodivergence. So we are a holistic approach that helps kids improve their focus and behavior and overall well-being. And I actually enrolled my son 5 years ago. That's how I stumbled into this world of functional neurology principles. Was my son was level 3 autistic, was the diagnosis that he had at age 4.5. And now, because of several things that we did, we worked with functional medicine, functional nutrition, and I do feel like this program, which approaches from a functional neurology perspective, feel like this was really the ultimate game changer that helped improve him so much. And I would never want to imply that this is going to be, the outcome for every single kid. But my son is now neurotypical, I would say. He's thriving in a super sweet private Christian school. He does not have an IEP. He's fully conversational, fully social. And again, not giving the impression that, hey, if you enroll your kid in our program, they will enter neurodivergent and they'll exit neurotypical. But we really do see kids that enroll and by the end of the program have improved tremendously. And it's with the types of symptoms that I was mentioning earlier. So things like if your child is easily angered or frustrated, or if they're struggling with verbal communication, or if you feel like they have emotional regulation issues, if they're struggling to read nonverbal cues, if they're having issues with seeing things big picture, if they get really obsessive or impulsive, have issues with behavior control or long-term focus on non-preferred activities, these are the kind of kids that end up enrolling in the program.
That's awesome. And so you work with Genesis is the company. So how would you described it a little bit, but kind of a little more of like what they do and what makes their approach different than kind of mainstream approach?
Yeah, I love that. So when we look at this program it's largely impacted by a guy named Dr. Robert Melillo. And Dr. Melillo is what we utilize is the Melillo method. And this guy has a PhD in developmental cognitive neuroscience and a master's in clinical rehabilitation neuropsychology. He's actually got a doctorate in chiropractic medicine as well. He's the co-founder of the International Association of Functional Neurology and Rehab. He's got a long list of amazing things that he's done. He's published over 100 scientific papers, and he's got 8 best-selling books on Amazon. If I were you, I would recommend that you check out the book Disconnected Kids by Dr. Melillo. And it's Melillo. And the approach that he takes and that we have adopted is teaching parents how to assess which regions of the brain for a child are weak or underfunctioning or underdeveloped. And then we give you coaches and a director that walk alongside you for a year plus, however long you need, to address those underfunctioning or underdeveloped parts of the brain so that you can see symptoms reduce and in some cases completely disappear. And one of the things that we work on first is called retained primitive reflexes. So maybe I can even share my screen here, but let me pull this up. So primitive reflexes play a really big role in a child's, here we go, a child's development. And for anybody that works in like the OT world, the speech world, they're already gonna be, even, nurses that may not even work in peds, they're gonna be familiar with the concept of primitive reflexes. And what these are is something that developed in your brainstem. So if I can make this nice and big, there we go. Can you see anything else on my screen, or is it just that?
Just that. You're good.
Okay, awesome. So as your brain develops, it starts from the bottom to the top and it grows from the back to the front. And then your frontal brain controls everything and accesses everything from the top down. And that's what executive functioning is. But as your brain develops, when you're first born, the only part of your brain that is fully functioning and fully developed is your brainstem, which is really wild. It's very different from other mammals. If you look at a human baby, which I'm not saying is an animal, but like in the mammal category, a human baby versus, let's say, a puppy or a kitten, it's really just 10 or 12 weeks before a puppy or a kitten is able to be separated from its mom. It's up, it's running around, it's playing, it's going to be fine. Whereas a human baby is, as you are very well aware, it takes a much longer period of time before it's able to just function just fine. We're talking like 2 decades before it can be off and be alone. Yeah, and a large reason for that is because in the very beginning, we're just born with a functioning brainstem. And the brainstem helps with mostly involuntary functions to keep you alive. So breathing, eating, sleeping, heart rate, digestion. And then after that, you start to develop the sensory motor level of your brain. And that's, your gross motors, fine motors, body spatial awareness. Above that is your cognition, so understanding jokes and sarcasm and long-term memory and IQ, those kind of things. And then the most frontal part of your brain is executive function. And this is why people come to us for help, is when executive function's been impacted. Oh, can you still see me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So these are the highest pain points for most people as a family, is they're coming to us because their kids are having issues with emotional regulation, meaning meltdowns, tantrums, maybe a child with strong anxiety, crying a lot. Organization, so this kid may look like as they walk through a room, a tornado was left behind them. Or self-monitoring, which is not controlling your impulses very well. Kids that just slap their siblings, for no reason, just because they were happy, but then also because they're mad. Or they're jumping out of their seats during dinner. They can't even sit and just enjoy a meal. Cognitive flexibility is just being able to go with the flow, see big picture. You're not extremely rigid if plans change last second. Social understanding is relating to your peers. And all of that is impacted first by your brainstem. So coming all the way back down to the brainstem for now, it again is primarily keeping you alive. And in the brainstem are housed these things called primitive reflexes. So primitive reflexes are things. Every nurse on the call right now goes, yes, we know about these. These are all things everybody has heard of, like in the medical field. Primitive reflexes are things that all babies are born with, and they're very boring. They're essential for survival before you have the rest of your brain developed. So anybody listening to this, if you have a newborn baby, you know about the rooting reflex. That's where you stroke a baby's cheek, and they reflexively turn their head and open their mouth, and they want to suck on whatever happens to be there, and that's how they learn how to nurse. So babies are born with a lot of little reflexes like that. You may remember the Palmar grasp, where you put your finger in a newborn's hand and they squeeze it reflexively. It's not because they have enough cognition yet to think about hugging you or emotionally connecting, but they would do it. I hate to break anybody's heart, but they would do it with an ink pen. That's a reflex that a baby has, a newborn. And so all of these are really helpful for survival until we get more of our brain developed. Now, when I want to take a drink, I don't rely on any reflex stimulation to turn my head and open my mouth. I just use the more frontal part of my brain to think about doing that. But what's interesting is all of these start to go away. All of your baby reflexes start to go away around month 3. and then they should be completely gone by your first birthday. But anytime you're looking at anybody with any neurodivergence, it doesn't matter if it's ADHD, autism, dyslexia, oppositional defiance, pathological demand avoidance, Tourette's, OCD, strong anxiety, big meltdowns. If you've got a mood disorder or a neurodevelopmental disorder, I have never seen somebody not have retained primitive reflexes. So, and for one reason or another, these baby reflexes, when they're retained, and it's usually due to some form of trauma, it could be a fever within the first year of life, it could be pregnancy difficulties. So we enroll a lot of families of adopted kids. Maybe the pregnancy didn't go so well with the biological mom, or maybe some bad choices were made on the part of a mom in a bad living situation, or maybe there were issues during labor and delivery, or maybe there were issues with anything really in the first year of life. It can even come down to the age of the parents at the time of conception, or hereditary factors. But for whatever reason, if these primitive reflexes did not integrate or go away, you always end up seeing, well, let me rephrase this to be a little more conservative. Anytime you have a neurodevelopmental disorder, you always end up finding that there are some retained primitive reflexes, some of these baby reflexes that didn't go away. And the reason why it impacts something as high as executive function, where it's emotional dysregulation, just not thinking through things well, being super sloppy and messy, whatever you're struggling with up here, these primitive reflexes impact everything else because your brain kept developing within the first year of life, but it developed on a poor foundation. So just like anything else with a bad foundation, if you build a house with a massive crack in your foundation and you go, the foundation doesn't matter, and you just keep throwing up the walls, throwing on the windows, putting on the doors, and then you get your roof on, well, a few months later, you may find yourself back to fixing your roof because now the house is settled and now you've got some cracks happening. And a few months later, you're fixing the roof again. And every contractor that comes in says, we can keep patching the roof, but ultimately this is a foundation problem. This is not going to go away. And you find yourself with your child in this cycle of consistently fixing the roof. You're teaching and training and parenting and disciplining until you are blue in the face. And that's when we go, hey, well, what if it's not a problem with executive function? What if you are actually a really good parent, even though you doubt yourself? And other people may judge you as your kid is throwing themselves down in the middle of the Walmart aisle because they didn't get the toy that they wanted. Or they're, maybe yelling at another kid that didn't share their toy with them. Or maybe your kid actually has ADD and is just more of very, very down or depressed or just can't do their homework on time. They're just not motivated. If you have done all of the parenting that you can possibly do, that's when we go, well, what if it's not a character problem on their part, on the child's part? It's not a parenting problem on your part. What if you actually have a deeper neurological issue, a foundational issue in your brain? And that's the first thing that we address with kids in the program is we teach parents how to assess for each one of these retained primitive reflexes so that then we can teach you how to get them to go away. Because all of these can go away in most people's brains. The only thing that would make me question a little bit is if there's actually lesions in the brain or if there's actually been a traumatic brain injury. But if we're talking about just normal neurodevelopmental disorders, there's no reason why somebody cannot integrate these reflexes. So if you're thinking, man, I've got a kid with ADHD symptoms or autism, I would say, man, let's get you on a call and we'll show you what to do in the program and we give you coaching to help you do it. And I can tell you some of the symptoms of some of these reflexes if that's helpful, just as you're listening to know, well, before I officially assess, how do I know if my child even is showing symptoms of this? Is that helpful or is that not? I just want to do whatever direction you want to go with this.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful. I mean, I know like watching some of your videos on Instagram, which we'll link that as well. I've gone through my kids. I'm like, oh, okay, each of you go and do this. And then, so yeah, I think just hearing some of that would be helpful.
Cool, yeah. And I think
I guess also a question with that is like when these parents are thinking about it or looking at their kids, I guess you could say like how early could they start doing these primitive reflexes that y'all suggest?
Yeah, so you can start as early as you are willing to start. For instance, if you've got a baby under the age of 1, so their primitive reflexes shouldn't even be completely integrated yet, you can actually do different things to encourage integration. So, for instance, to help integrate the rooting reflex, you can literally just stroke your baby's cheek as often as possible. You can just kiss them on their cheeks and drag your nose, or you can just do this. And this encourages integration of something else you can do is not swaddle. You can swaddle for the first couple weeks. Now with both my kids, I swaddled actually past a year, which is kind of crazy to think. I was buying like extra large swaddles for my kids, but swaddling past a certain age actually keeps your Moreau, it discourages your Moreau primitive reflex from integrating. The Moreau is linked to nervous system dysregulation and struggling with loud or sudden noises. So especially if you're a double whammy, I would go, okay, there's reasonable cause here to think my child has a Moreau. But we do have people enroll as young as 2. Earlier than that is really rare. I can maybe count on one hand, but 2 is even a little bit young. I would say the typical child's age I enroll is 4 and up. We've even had 20-year-olds, 50-year-olds enroll in the program for themselves just because they've always felt dysregulated, or they've always felt like they're kind of stuck in fight or flight and they want to help their nervous system. And then we've had severe cases that have enrolled in adulthood. But we'll enroll as young as you want. If you're just like, hey, I want to learn how to do this, I want to work on it, we'll help you no matter what stage you're in. But I would say younger than 4 is you're a super rock star. Like it's going to take some extra effort on your part. You're going to do hand over hand for all of these exercises, meaning you're going to move their body for them because they won't understand the instructions most likely.
Awesome.
Yes. So, as kind of your families have enrolled, what differences do they begin to see?
Yeah, well, it depends on what they enrolled for. So, for instance, we have had kids enroll, let's say, with severe OCD symptoms. So, actually, I'll talk about an adult, and I can even link her testimonial if you want. I can provide that because she shared a testimony with us. She enrolled for severe OCD, severe anxiety, and some POTS symptoms as well. If you're familiar with the POTS autoimmune condition that is just really kind of rampant lately. It's really become more prevalent since COVID for one reason or another. I've got theories for that, but she was seeing a huge improvement with her ability to just get off of her couch and go to Walmart and go to Starbucks and drive. She was having such severe OCD that she could not bring herself to leave her house for fear of what was going to happen to her, or a panic attack over, I don't feel like the shopping cart is the exact one that I want, or I feel like I have to go straighten this thing on the shelf. So we've got people as severe as that who are saying, hey, now I'm driving around town and I'm like happy tears. I just can't believe my life is normal again, or more normal. And then we've got kids with severe autism that weren't able to communicate, that are more able to communicate. Like my son is a good example of that. He's got no issues telling me what's on his heart. And I remember crying during my first consultation 5 years ago and just saying, if I could just have a conversation with my son, that's my goal. We've got people that enroll, basically whatever your symptom is. If you feel like you've got a neurological issue, just grab a consultation with me, because we actually don't charge for those consultations. As long as you're like in good faith, you are honestly considering our program, and I'll sit down and I'll break down to you what's going on in your kid's brain just based off of the symptoms that you're sharing, and what I would recommend, like in terms of the program, here's what we would address with your child. So focus is something we see get a lot better. Here's a list of symptoms that we often see. Like one of the things we talk about in addition to primitive reflex integration is hemisphericity. And this is discussing after your brainstem develops. Now we're looking above that. Your brain splits into 2 hemispheres. And each hemisphere houses different things, is responsible for different things. Your left hemisphere is where anger and frustration is housed. Verbal communication is housed. Kids with really strong left hemispheres tend to have overreactive immune systems. Not all the time, but it's common to have these kids that have a history of struggling with asthma or eczema or allergies. Their IQ is housed in the left hemisphere, so even if they're struggling in a lot of ways, parents tend to say, but man, I can see the wheels turning in my kid's brain. I know that they're smart. They may be struggling in school or not able to get the words out, but I can tell they're so bright. So memory and detail orientation is housed in the left hemisphere, which means these kids tend to have really good memories over their preferences. Like, can tell you every single fact about every Pokemon ever. And impulses are housed in the left. So kids with really strong left hemispheres tend to be very impulsive. That's the gas pedal to the brain. So it's like they can't stop thinking or can't stop talking, can't stop moving, can struggle falling asleep at night, just calming down their brains, calming down their bodies. They tend to be good with fine motor skills and really prefer pattern and repetition and structure. They don't like when plans change last second. Transitions are hard, and they do really well with short-term focus, not so much long-term focus. And so most of the kids in the program, I'd say 99.9% of who we enroll, have really strong left brains and really weak right. So, and we're not looking for 100% left and 0% right, but just gaps. A lot of people that enroll have just some gaps in that right hemisphere where maybe emotional regulation is the big thing, or they struggle with sadness and remorse in the moment. I was talking to a family not too long ago where the child says really, really hateful things to mom. And it's really cutting the mom very deep, even though she knows my child's young, they can't possibly mean these things that they're saying. But the child doesn't feel sadness and remorse ever or until hours later. And so the ability to read nonverbal cues and your social and emotional intelligence is housed in your right hemisphere. So you can imagine if we're enrolling kids with weak right hemispheres and strong left, the left is IQ, the right is EQ. So we enroll a lot of kids that are angry and frustrated, because you can see that's in the left hemisphere, but pretty bright, and then just are socially struggling. They struggle with making or keeping friendships. They come across as awkward to their peers or annoying or obnoxious to their peers. And that's not a word I'm using, that's a word I hear parents come to me using where they say, man, my kid can't play in the neighborhood with other kids. Or this mom called me and said, your kid is no longer invited to my house. So weak right hemispheres struggle with going with the flow, maintaining big picture perspective. So sometimes it's the sweetest little girls maybe, but they have bad anxiety or OCD symptoms. And so that's losing that big picture. That is, you can have kids that struggle with behavior control, impulse control. Sometimes these kids, the moms say, I can't take my kid out in public because I'm not convinced my kid won't run off in the middle of the street. And other kids their age are not doing that. So, and then long-term focus is a struggle. Long-term focus on non-preferred activities is a struggle for kids with those weaker right brains, usually. But I would say if a parent is looking at this list and they think about their kids and they say, my kid's not like, some of these things my kid doesn't struggle with on the right brain. But we definitely have a struggle with, let's say, emotional regulation and being able to maintain big picture. I'd say that's worth the consultation. So if you've been working with...
It definitely sounds like pretty much anybody could benefit from this.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm glad you said that, because we do have families that enroll that have really high pain points and big urgent issues. And then I have enrolled some families that really don't have massive things going on, but they just say, I just want my family to have pretty much perfectly functioning brains, and we want to assess, see where we're at. It's kind of like you don't have to be extremely overweight to enroll in a fitness program, but it's just good overall to have good muscle tone and muscle, bone density. It's very similar with the brain. Anybody can benefit from it for sure, especially as you're getting into older age. We have 2 clients right now that are 70 years old that are really fine, but they just sensed their cognition was slipping and wanted to enroll.
Well, that's awesome. So what would you say as far as like going into the nutrition aspect? Because you had mentioned something about y'all also do nutrition. Is that correct?
So actually, I'm a functional nutritionist, and I learned those principles and took that certification as a way to help support my family, because I was so certain that was going to be the game changer for my son. And we found that before this program, this Delta Genesis program. And nutrition definitely helped him. But I was left a little, I don't know, maybe like a lot of moms out there, you just really think that nutrition's going to be the thing. And it helped, but it wasn't the main thing. So the program itself doesn't work on nutrition. We decide, well, not we, but the owners decided to be purely focused on the brain. But as far as nutrition goes, definitely food has a big impact. There's a strong gut-brain axis. I would say the brain controls everything ultimately, but you can definitely influence your brain. If you're eating foods that you have underlying sensitivities towards, or if you've got really poor gut health, a kid that's chronically constipated or chronically struggling with diarrhea, it's gonna create a lot of neuroinflammation typically, at least from articles I've read and my experience with my own kids. And so if you can support your kids through nutrition and gut health as you're doing a program like this, it's just going to be an even more amazing way to support them. Like that, there is such a strong gut brain connection, but it's not something we address in the program. So actually, for a long time, I was partnering with Plexus and I was working for Delta Genesis because they're both so helpful. Like I just think it's just such a wonderful couple of ways to support kids' brains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know we've talked about it a lot on the podcast too, just gut health, like you were saying, and how it impacts so much of our life. But so with talking about all of this, Candice, for a parent who's sitting here going, "Oh, like I want to look into this more," like where can they go to connect with you or to kind of dig into this more?
Yeah. Well, the main place that you could go is www.deltagenesis.org/CS video. So CS for Candice Schroeder video. So again, that's www.deltagenesis.org/CS video.
And we'll
And
put that in the show notes as well.
oh, great, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can watch the video that will show up when you pull that up. And as soon as you watch that, there's a link underneath that says apply now. And that's just applying for a consultation with me. And again, the consultation is free. So if they want to learn about the program, talk about their child with me, there's really no risk besides just risk. Like the only thing you're losing is time. So, but it's just incredible to be able to sit and share those symptoms with me. I can break down what's going on for your child in terms of like, here's what we would do in the program. And I brought up my Instagram. It's called autism underscore ADHD underscore with underscore hope. So autism and ADHD with hope. And I've got a lot of videos on here that can show you different ways to assess for different retained primitive reflexes, different symptoms to be on the lookout for that could mean, hey, this is not a character problem for your child. This is actually a symptom of a neurological thing that's fixable. So anyway, that can be a really good place to connect to. And that's really me that will talk with you on there. So if you really want to just chat with me, just DM me. I check those multiple times every day, and I'm always in a conversation with like 10 families, maybe not 10, but multiple families at once.
And I think that's one thing that's so important that you said is that like this isn't a character flaw, it's not a character thing. Because I know like as parents, and I remember even when I was in the classroom, like there were things where, we're like, why can't you just change this? And it's just that reminder that they really can't change it, that they need that extra help with it.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I mean, we had a child graduate not long ago from the program, and when they enrolled, they were very socially awkward, according to the parents, and very emotionally dysregulated. So it was very hard for this little boy to make friends, and also he would flip his lid. He'd have a big meltdown or a big emotional reaction if somebody his age didn't want to play with him or wanted to play a different way. It was kind of my way or the highway as he wanted to play with people. And he just graduated and he just was spending time with extended family, and it was so sweet because the mom told us, she said, it's just amazing because the extended family was telling me he's just like, I'm sorry if this wording offends anybody, but just shooting straight, they said that the extended family said he's just like a normal kid now. Like, what did you guys do? He's just regulated and just playing really well with everybody. So a lot of times it really, if your child shows during an assessment that they've got retained reflexes and a weak right hemisphere in the brain, and the 10 other things that we assess for in the program, we'll look at auditory processing and their visual function and a whole lot more, then you can say, okay, like I can say absolutely this is due to this neurological weakness. And it's not that my child is incapable of controlling themselves, but it's going to make it a lot harder. For instance, there's a reflex called the Moro, the M-O-R-O, the Moro or the startle reflex. And if your child has that, then they can have auditory or cognitive startles. Auditory startles are them getting very upset or mad, and some adult women have this. If you hear a plate crash or something really loud, and if you feel a rush of anger, then that can be a Moro. Or also a cognitive startle is just something startled my brain because I didn't expect it and I definitely didn't like it, but the reaction is so disproportionate to the crime in question. So a child coming in the door and it's just the wrong kind of dinner that they weren't expecting. Or suddenly you're not going to the park because it's raining. If you've got a child throwing themselves down and having big meltdowns, and if they have a Moro, what's happening is they don't have access to those regulatory networks in their brain. So they've got a really strong left brain, a weakness in that right, and that right should be helping them with emotional dysregulation. If you're neurodivergent, you've actually got a smaller corpus callosum, which is the part, it's like this little bridge that connects your two hemispheres of the brain. And so you're not able to facilitate fast or efficient communication between those two hemispheres. Basically, those regulating networks don't exist for a lot of these kids. A lot of your kids, if you're listening, and you're like, yeah, my kid's like, I've got one kid in the family who is really struggling. If I say it's time to turn off the Nintendo Switch or it's time to turn off the TV, and it is just tears every time. Whereas the other kids in the family go, okay, Mom, yeah, I understand, the timer's up. Then instead of continuing to discipline them and making them feel so terrible about themselves as they get older, look into the Moro reflex, if nothing else, because a Moro floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol when you have any of those cognitive startles or an auditory startle, like I was talking about a minute ago. So you think about a little kid, he gets told no, and what happens if you have a Moro is your body floods with those stress hormones, and it can take a really long time for your body to process those stress hormones, and so it can be an hour later, your kid's still dysregulated. So it's very, very often not what we think it is. I think parenting is more complicated. There's a lot more nuance than even when we were all kids. I think neurodivergence is not just better diagnosed. I don't believe that at all. Not that it's not better diagnosed, but I just believe that there truly is more neurodivergence now than there used to be. We're just seeing more and more epigenetic factors or environmental factors working against our kids' generation that is just having a negative, profound impact on young developing brains. But you're not just left with bad news. You can rehabilitate or strengthen those weaker or under-functioning areas of the brain that are driving these troubling symptoms that are keeping parents up at night. I just got off of 3 calls this morning, and it's typically 1 in 3 where a mom will break down crying because she says, this is so family impacting. Like this, I just fear for my son or daughter's future. I just don't see their marriage going well. And they're talking about a 5-year-old. They're saying, I just see in the future that if we can't fix this, the only future, I've had a few moms say the only future for my son I see is jail or medication. And we're here for the families that want to try something before they go the medication route. Not that I'm knocking anybody that feels they need to use that. I think it's a very personal decision, but we're here for the families that want to try getting to the root first.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that because, I mean, like you said, it's getting to that root problem. And, I mean, that's what we do with gut health. That's what we do with elite aging because it's like these medications are good, but you also have to look at the fact that they're going to have side effects. And then you have to weigh those out. It's like, okay, well, my kid is dealing with this, but if I give him this medication, then he's going to have this also. And so it's like, it's a very symptom solving type of a thing when what you're doing is like getting literally to the root of the problem. And it's amazing just the neurological stuff. I know y'all don't do this, but like vagus nerve, like if you look that up, it's very interesting about how that's connected to everything. And so, it's just really, really cool how there's hope. There's more than just medication.
Yes, I love that. And I was, here, Let me pull this up because when we're talking about the vagus nerve, we're talking about like the nervous system as a whole as well. I love like vagus nerve stimulation, and it's just so important for your nervous system. So I love that you're talking about that. But even looking here on Google, if you can see my screen, all I did was just Google, do retained primitive reflexes impact the nervous system? And it says, yes, these significantly impact the nervous system by preventing the full maturation of higher brain centers, leaving an individual in a more reactive state. They act as a stressor on the central nervous system, often causing fight or flight responses, anxiety, challenges with sensory processing, motor coordination, and cognitive functioning. And here right away it goes into the brainstem. And so if somebody is having issues with their vagus nerve, I would start Googling around and just say, can the vagus nerve be improved by primitive reflex integration? And just kind of doing their own research based on the symptoms that they're seeing, because I think even direct vagus nerve stimulation is just so supportive and so helpful. I think all of this I'm so glad we live in, sometimes I'm not as glad about the day and age we live in due to some things in the news. I'm like, it would have been so simple 100 years ago. But I'm really glad in other ways, like vagus nerve stimulation, primitive reflex integration, all of these ways of getting to the root of mental health issues or physical health, nervous system things. These didn't exist 100 years ago, to my knowledge. So I can tell I would love all the things you talk about.
So as we close, Candice, what would you say to like those parents or even someone themselves who are either like suspecting a diagnosis or in those early stages of getting those diagnoses and are overwhelmed by it all? Like, what words of wisdom would you give them?
Yeah, I would say if you are, at first I would tell them to take a deep breath and remember that they're not alone. There are resources and support systems available, and taking the first step, whether it's reaching out for help or finding a program like ours, can make a huge difference. So if you've got a child who is struggling with any of these kind of symptoms that we talked about on this podcast today, I would definitely grab Dr. Malilo's book, Disconnected Kids, start reading through it and see if it's an approach that you feel in alignment with. And then know that we work on the things that he talks about in the book. So if you've got a child and you're fearing an upcoming diagnosis or you're wondering if you should get a diagnosis, I'll say this too. This is just me personally. Definitely do whatever you feel you need to do as a family. But diagnoses can be helpful to get certain types of support. But at the same time, let's say you have a child who is very impulsive and very emotionally dysregulated and struggles with focus and hyperactivity. You go to a doctor and the doctor says, okay, your child has ADHD. Check, 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 ADHD. And you say, oh, finally, a diagnosis. What does that mean? And they say, it means they're going to struggle with focus, emotional dysregulation, and hyperactivity. And you say, yeah, but that's why I came here, because they struggle with that. So what does that mean? And they say, it means they're going to have ADHD. But what does that mean? It means they're going to focus with these things. So in some cases, a diagnosis might not be the most helpful thing. I leave that to a family, between them and their medical provider to decide. But if you're really wanting to talk about, just to step outside of the diagnosis for a minute from the label, which can sometimes be helpful, but not all the time. If you want to just leave that behind and hop on a call, we're going to break down just what that really means. Well, if they're struggling with focus and hyperactivity, you're looking at a weaker right hemisphere of the brain, most likely. If they're struggling with emotional dysregulation, you're looking maybe at a Moreau primitive reflex that has retained. And we're going to look at if they struggle with eye contact, let's talk about their visuals. If they cannot follow multiple step instructions and they're very overstimulated in a loud and busy environment, we're going to talk about auditory processing. And so breaking down functionally what's happening in the brain at that level, I think, at least for me and my family, was so much more effective than just kind of putting a label on a kid, because then the only step I knew after that was, I guess, just medication, and that wasn't the route we wanted to take anyway. So and I leave that up to a family. I don't think a diagnosis is wrong or right, but if you know that at the end of that diagnosis, it's not going to be a treatment plan that you're in alignment with anyway, maybe just hop on my Instagram, scroll through some videos, see what you think, and talk to your husband or your wife if you're married. Not sure if you've got mostly female or male listeners, but talk to your spouse, and we're here if you want to grab a consultation.
Well, thank you so much, Candice, for sharing all of that. I know it was definitely insightful for me, and I'm sure many of our listeners as well. So thank you so much for hopping on with us.
Yes, thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's really a treat to get to be on here. I know you guys talk about amazing things, so thanks for welcoming me in. It's an honor. Dear Lord, thank you so much for bringing us all together today, where we can listen and share about different things that can really help our kids and help our families. Because, Lord, the ultimate thing is that our children are able to think deeply on the things of God. That's our ultimate heart's desire. It's not really that our kids would make A's in school or be more emotionally regulated so we're not embarrassed in the grocery store, but it's really so that our kids and our families can glorify you. And glorifying you is always to our benefit as well, Lord. It's for man's good and also your glory. And so, God, I just pray as people listen today that if there's somebody out there that has been looking for something to help their kid neurologically, I pray that you'd give them wisdom on next steps, and if they should contact Brittany or Jessica or me for whatever they're thinking is the best next step. God, I pray that you'd give them wisdom and courage to do that, and just give peace to the hearts of all the parents listening to you. Give them peace and joy today as they know that ultimately you are our true healer, and you're sovereign over everything, and you're infinitely wise and loving, and you care so deeply about us. So, Lord, and if anybody's listening today and they don't know you, I pray that they would come to a true saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. So we love you, God. Thank you so much for our time together. And in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to come hang out with us over on Instagram. You can find us at The Strong and Steady. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and share this episode with a friend. We'll see you next time on Strong and Steady.